Carrie Buck was the young Virginia woman who was at the center of the 1927 Supreme Court case on compulsory sterilization, Buck v. Bell. The bare facts, and certainly the facts presented in the case, do not remotely suggest the cruelty and dishonesty with which she was treated in her lifetime. Carrie was born in Charlottesville, Virginia in 1906. She was the daughter of Emma Buck, whose parents, like many Southerners after the Civil War, became impoverished. Emma dropped out of school after the 5th grade and married Frank Buck in 1896 when she was 24. When Carrie was born 10 years later, Frank was no longer on the scene, although it's unclear whether he died or abandoned his family. Left to fend for herself in an economically depressed area, possessing few skills and little education, and with a child to raise, Emma may have turned to prostitution, although the record on this point is not clear. What is clear is that when Carrie was 3 or 4, a Charlottesville family, John and Alice Dobbs, volunteered to provide Carrie a home. What may have seemed an act of laudable charity was a fraud. From the beginning, Carrie was treated as a servant, forced to call her so-called parents Mr. and Mrs. Dobbs, and set to work as a housemaid. She was permitted to complete the 5th grade, at which point she continued in domestic service for the Dobbs and was hired out to neighbors. Clarence Garland, a nephew of Mrs. Dobbs, visited the family. During that visit, he raped Carrie and she became pregnant. The Dobbs immediately petitioned to have Carrie removed from their household. In their petition, they claimed she was feeble-minded, epileptic, and that her disabilities were so great they could no longer control or care for her. Nowhere was her pregnancy mentioned. And it's notable that the Dobbs, having housed Carrie for years and who had enjoyed the financial and other benefits of her labor, had never apparently noticed these disabilities before her pregnancy. None of this concerned the Commission on Feeble-Mindedness. Back then, feeble-mindedness was associated with moral depravity and worse. Feeble-minded women could reproduce, thereby diluting the strength of the nation's human stock and imposing costly burdens on society. The commission met on January 23, 1924. Carrie was not represented by a lawyer. No advocate was appointed for her. No school or medical records were produced. She was pronounced feeble-minded or epileptic and, quote, ought to be confined in an institution for the feeble-minded or epileptic, end quote. Thus began Carrie's journey toward her fateful date with the United States Supreme Court. Carrie Buck does not appear as a character in my book Warrensburg, but her story is essential for understanding the nature of the eugenics movement and the lengths its believers were willing to go to achieve their goal of compulsory sterilization for those they considered unfit.